Good evening and thank you for joining us on 13 Plus. I'm Mary Coleman. Hope you're having a great Friday evening. We all know how important it is to buckle up when we're in our vehicles. You may even own a car that will sound an alarm until you fasten that seatbelt. But did you know there's no set mandate for wearing a seatbelt in the back seat? Our investigative team found that it's something that could soon change.
You've probably heard that sound or something similar when you get behind the wheel of a car. It's a seatbelt warning system and a reminder to buckle up. Those reminders have been required in driver's seats for decades, but there's no such mandate when it comes to the back seat, where children often end up sitting and where seatbelt use is said to reduce the risk of fatality for rear seat occupants by 55% in cars, 74% in light trucks and vans. Now the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is eyeing a potentially life-saving update.
Reporter Heather Graff explains the proposal to expand seatbelt warning systems in cars.
Plus, a mother shares her nightmare as a reminder of what's at stake.
Very boisterous, very outdoorsy, very outgoing.
There are simply not enough words for Rosalind Darby to describe him.
You know, he was kind of a jewel to me.
Because her son Calvin was one of a kind. And their time together was far too short.
I mean, it's hard.
It was August of 2007, a vacation and a road trip for their family of 6.
I drove maybe half a block and I said, Calvin, do you have your seatbelt on? And he said, I don't think he said anything. I think he just sighed, and we pulled over and heard the click. And so we went on our way.
What Rosalind didn't know is that Calvin later unbuckled as they drove through rural Idaho. And this image of their mangled SUV shows you what happened next.
I knew that he had passed away when we crashed.
12-year-old Calvin was the only fatality and the only one not wearing a seatbelt.
A 3- and a 5-year-old in the rear, and then a 12-year-old and 11-month-old in the middle, and 2 adults in the front. And everybody that was buckled lived. The seatbelts saved their lives.
And still,
my son would be 28.
All these years later, Rosalind can't help but think this sound might have kept Calvin safe.
I just feel like, dang, if we would have just had that, you know?
She's talking about seatbelt warning systems featuring visual and audible alerts that activate when a belt is not fastened. The reminders currently required only in driver's seats under federal motor vehicle safety standards that date back to the 1970s.
Seatbelts are really the first line of defense when you're in a crash to protect you, but not enough people are buckling up.
Kathy Chase leads the group known as Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety that's long been pushing to expand seatbelt warning systems to all seating positions, citing statistics that show the impact of belt use. For instance, in 2021, about 26,000 passenger vehicle occupants lost their lives on U.S. roads. And among those crashes in which restraint status is known, 57% of rear seat fatalities were unbelted.
You know, we have in our cars, we have reminders if the trunk is open or the skylight is still open or your gas tank is running low. But there's no reminder for the passenger side or anyone in the rear seats to buckle up. This is beyond urgent.
Other countries are already requiring this?
The European Union has required belt reminders for all passengers since 2019.
What does that say to you?
We're behind. We could be saving lives that we're not.
In fact, Congress, way back in 2012, directed the U.S. Department of Transportation's National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to begin what's known as a rulemaking to mandate those seatbelt reminders for back seats. But more than a decade later, it still hasn't happened.
It's dependent upon the leadership of the U.S. Department of Transportation, which of course changes from administration to administration.
And while many automakers have voluntarily added seatbelt warning systems for the front passenger seat, data from NHTSA indicates just 47% of new cars feature those same reminders in the back. This, as the National Occupant Protection Use Survey shows seatbelt use for years has been lower in the rear seat than the front.
It's beyond frustrating. It's tragic.
Then, in August of 2023, a significant step forward. NHTSA finally announced a proposed rule that would require automobile manufacturers to equip vehicles with seatbelt use warning systems for the right front passenger and rear seats as well. The agency estimates the changes would prevent approximately 300 non-fatal injuries and over 100 fatalities every year. But NHTSA is still reviewing public comments, and it's not yet a done deal.
I guess I would just say, what are you waiting on? Is Calvin not worth it? Is the next child not worth it?
We took Rosalind's question to Capitol Hill, where Representative Jan Schakowsky of Illinois chairs the U.S. House Subcommittee on Consumer Protection.
We have to do better, and NHTSA, this agency, has to speed up.
What else can Congress do to ensure that this time NHTSA actually gets it done?
This legislation that we have passed is, in general, bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats. So what we need to do, we set a fire under NHTSA. You've got to get to work and just get it done and get it implemented.
NHTSA, meanwhile, declined our request for an interview, and when asked about the timeline for implementation, referred us back to its 232-page proposal that suggests the expanded seatbelt warning requirements be rolled out in stages, with automakers expected to comply about 1 to 2 years after publication of the final rule.
Gosh, it could really be easily fixed. It really could be.
From Rosalind's perspective, it's a simple solution to help protect our most precious cargo.
A lot of times kids lay down and they get comfortable, or they unbuckle and they reach over and they get their blanket, or they get their binky, Nintendo Switch, whatever it is.
It happened to her son.
Just imagine, you know?
And it could happen to anyone.
Losing a child, it just devastates an entire family.
Reporter Heather Graff joins us now. Heather, do we know how much money it would take to implement these expanded seatbelt warning systems in new cars?
Lee, NHTSA's proposal does include a cost estimate, and to comply with the new rear seatbelt warning requirements, it says automakers would spend about $166 million. Now, that might sound like a lot, but get this, it comes out to less than $20 per vehicle. And in the passenger seat, where the technology is already common, the cost assessment is just $2.13 per vehicle.
And what about automakers? What are they saying about all of this?
Well, we reached out to the Alliance for Automotive Innovation that represents automakers, who told us safety is the auto industry's top priority. The group submitted public comment on seatbelt warning systems to NHTSA and wrote that in general, auto innovators support NHTSA's efforts to expand them. But the Alliance did express concerns that some of the proposed requirements differ from those currently in place in Europe. And they asked NHTSA to make changes so that U.S. regulations better align with global markets.
Here is a live look outside this evening. Still some sunlight if you want to catch it. I hope you'll join us for 13 News live at 10 and have an awesome weekend.